The notion that marriages are supposed to be a trap in perpetuity is luckily an outdated principle. It's an outdated concept. Let's get to some of the polls. Right, it's polling season, baby. It's poll time. Poll. Of course, I'm not talking about Poland. I'm talking about polls in the New York Times. Now, this is Fox News' analysis, which incorporates Jordan Peterson's weeping sentiment expressed all throughout, but probably the best way to analyze this and interpret this information anyway. Take a look.
Percent of voters feel America is on the wrong track.
And 37% of them feel the country's problems have gotten so bad we're now in danger of failing as a nation as we come up on our 250th year anniversary.
That's right. Psychologist and author Dr. Jordan Peterson is here to react. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I think if you spend...
Why do we have a Canadian benzo addict responding to this shit? Canadian spotted, opinion discarded.
40 years demoralizing people that it works. And we've spent probably more than 40 years. Since the mid-60s, we've been on a campaign to demoralize people. I think it started with the Club of Rome types who claimed that the world was overpopulated and that we're all headed to hell in a handbasket. And there's no evidence that any of that is true. I mean, the idea was that by the year 2000...
Motherfucker, are you a Quebecer? Who's we? Are you speaking Le French? The hell is we, brother? Fuck you mean we, brother? What's happening here? Oui.
Everyone would be starving to death and that commodity prices would shoot through the roof and that the planet couldn't tolerate 3 billion people or 4 billion people, and all that turned out to be utter nonsense. We're richer worldwide than we ever were before. There's absolutely no shortage of resources. Commodity prices have gone down. There were world record harvests this year, and all you ever hear is doom and gloom.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and because I tend to think about things psychologically, obviously, and my sense is that people who want to garner power to themselves use fear. And I think that's how you can tell real leaders from wannabe tyrants, is that if they're trying to terrorize you into granting them all the power, then they're essentially tyrants and not leaders. And you see that happening everywhere.
Jordan, who are the 35% who think we're on the right track?
Well,
who are those people?
They're probably people who are temperamentally optimistic. You know, I mean, some of what determines...
I like that they brought him on to analyze like the political structure. And, like, he's just simply being like, oh, they're just optimistic. Okay, so then this renders the poll useless, Jordan. Because it says nothing about the actual material conditions, which, to a certain degree, I do agree. It literally doesn't say anything. People are just, like, vibes-based for the most part. You know what I mean?
Determines people's attitudes about the future varies with the circumstances, but some people, you know, they're so optimistic by central temperament that even if they're in a crisis, they're not going to be upset. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, they also tend to be conservatives because we know as well that the most unhappy people are liberal men, and then I think the next most unhappy people are liberal women. And so, well, so the happy ones are optimistic and they tend to be conservative.
I know you told me you spend time in Boston, a lot of time.
Yeah. Guy who cries on a regular basis talking about how unhappy liberal men are is pretty funny. Like, that's an odd take, but okay.
Boston, but you're Canadian, but you spend a lot of time in America, so you got a sense of both. So is your sense that America feels negative about our own country because of a deliberate plot to make us not like what we have, feel guilty for what we've obtained, to resent our past? Or is this something that just happened? Or do you think it's someone scripting this?
Well, I think there's two things that are happening. Is that the culture war is a war between systems of ideas, and it's essentially a war between the ideas that are part and parcel of the classic Western tradition that's grounded in the biblical corpus, essentially, so Judeo-Christian culture, and the counter-reaction to that, which is kind of what post-Enlightenment Marxism. And so you have a war between two sets of ideas, but then you also have people who are acting directly in, you know, a quasi conspiratorial manner. The Club of Rome types, for example, from the 1960s, who decided back then that, like as I said earlier, that the planet is going to hell in a handbasket and that something has to be done about that emergency. And so,
and we're the problem.
We're the problem, yeah. There's too many human beings on the planet. That's a good way of identifying people who are definitely not your allies. If people who think there are too many people on the planet, that is not a good thing to think. That's like something with genocidal, that's got genocidal implications.
Can I just ask you just about...
Wait a minute, that's like eco-fascist conservatives, though. I mean, he's not wrong, but that's mostly conservatives who think that. So... I don't know where he's coming from. Does he not know his audience here?
Our country in particular, there's so much to like. We used to be a country that was too boastful, where people were like, enough with America being the greatest, and we walk on water and we didn't see our problems. Now all we see is problems. Like, what happened to that school of thought where your team was the best team? And the problem maybe for critics would be the arrogance of Americans. Now we have no self-esteem and we want to apologize to everybody. When did that happen, or do you not see it?
I think that emerged out of the 60s as well. I think the universities had a lot to do with that. There's the left-wing tyrannical types are particularly good at manipulating guilt, and that actually works quite well on conservatives, because conservatives tend to be more conscientious. And so if you accuse a conservative of moral impropriety on the guilt front, they're likely to take that seriously.
That's so stupid. First of all, no, they're not. Secondly, what the fuck are you talking about? Don't you claim that, like, liberals always love getting hoisted on their own petard for the same exact moralizing all the time? What the fuck? It's so dumb. No, conservatives just don't like being called out. That's it. Nobody likes being called out. Conservatives just happen to do shit that is easily call-outable.
Notice if you say to someone who's more conscientious, look, you know, you're probably a little more sexist than you could be, and you're probably a little more racist than you could be. The conservative type who's conscientious is going to think, well, you know, I'm really not perfect, and there are ways I could improve, and I could look at myself, and that's fine, because you should look at yourself. But the problem with it,
the problem with conservatives is that they're too conscientious. That's what I'm always thinking, dude. Problem is, they're always conscious of the top of the hour ad break, and they know that at the top of the hour there's a 3-minute ad break, and they're ready for it. Conservatives are always self-criticizing, dude. They're always engaging in self-crit. They're always avoiding the top of the hour ad breaks by subscribing for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. You too can avoid the top of the hour ad break, by the way. 34 MKD, thank you for the 50 get the subs. Allowing 50 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
It is that it allows the psychopathic types who are manipulative and power hungry to use to use your guilt as a lever, and the left in particular.
Yeah, the idea, that's the funniest thing Jordan Peterson might have ever said in the last couple of years, other than the penis sucking machines in China. Because it's like saying conservatives are self-reflecting or engaging in the act of introspection is a laughable notion. You're literally at the main place conservatives go to, Fox News, to never engage in any kind of introspection, to basically have all of their cooked up, ridiculous, oftentimes racially charged biases reinforced. It's ridiculous.
Especially the radical left, and those are where the real psychopathic types hang out. They're unbelievably good at manipulating guilt. And so, yeah, they're unbelievably good at it, you know, and everybody's got something to feel guilty about, which is also something that tyrants know. And so,
not Ainsley.
Yeah, no, well, that's good. It's good. It's good to be perfect.
Of my sins.
Yeah, that's good.
There have been plenty.
Yeah, have you repented, or have you quit indulging in them?
I have quit indulging, and I think
sorry about that.
This is not about me, Dr. That's between me and my God.
Right, as it should be.
I did want to ask you about the marriage statistics and the statistics for ruling out children. 1 in 4 are now ruling out kids. I'm wondering if they'll change their minds when they get older, because I know I did. I focused on my career, and then the children came. You know, I wanted to have kids in my late 30s. But then 2 out of 5 think marriage is an outdated tradition. That's pretty sad.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you convince young people, as we have, that the planet's going to hell in a handbasket and that there are too many people and that your children do nothing but produce excess carbon dioxide and that you're contributing to the destruction of the planet, you know, by planning to have kids, then the moral kids are going to start wondering about whether or not that's appropriate, and then the irresponsible kids have an extra reason for not doing anything that's vaguely mature. The problem with that is that, well, what the hell's the alternative? I mean, people who are alone, especially involuntarily, they just go.
Yeah, the worst aspect of anthropogenic climate change isn't necessarily that we are basically destroying the planet. It's the fact that younger generations are facing an existential threat that they're aware of and therefore don't reproduce. We should stop talking about climate change altogether, says the oil lobbyist, because it's bumming kids out. Love that.
Go crazy, right? Because we all need people around us to tap us into shape. That's actually how we stay sane.
I think some people are just staying in relationships and not getting married. You look at the statistics, divorce, it's 50%. It's even higher than that in the church.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, couples in New York are like, is it ethical to have children? That's why. Dude, no, they're not. That's like one random fucking weirdo that you've seen on Twitter. I'm sorry. The overwhelming majority of people are not making considerations about the ethics of bringing a life onto this planet due to anthropogenic climate change. They're not antinatalist. They're just broke. They're working too much. You need to have both parents work full-time jobs in order to take care of a child. Make this make sense. Jordan Peterson refuses to recognize that capitalism is the main reason why it is unsustainable for new couples to have children. They can't afford it. It's like fucking 40 bills to have a child in a hospital. Who the fuck has that kind of moolah? God damn it. That's it. They don't have a house. They can't pay for the fucking medical bills. They can't pay for the child rearing. They don't even have federally mandated paid parental leave. Why the fuck would anybody have a child under those circumstances? It's so stupid. Sweaty.
people also will assume that, what is it? The unmarried people who stay together make a big mistake, okay? Because they never commit formally to each other. And there's a strange idea lurking under that, because to me, the process of living together means something like this. So, you know, if I tell you, well, we'll move in together and see how it goes, because that's what you mean when you say, let's move in together. You're basically saying something like, well, we'll take each other for a test run like we might with a used car, but we're each going to keep to ourselves the possibility of shifting upward if we can find someone better. Right. And that's really not much of a...
Oh my God, this is like the pseudo-intellectual way of describing hypergamy. Okay? It's a deeply cynical and profoundly unserious assessment. Very dumb.
Basis for a long-term relationship. You have to say, yeah, that's right, I have the right to upgrade. You'll do for now, but I have the right to upgrade. Well, absolutely.
But they don't.
Well, and the thing is that,
if you do,
it's a real insult to the person that you're with, and it's an insult to yourself too. Plus, you don't really commit, right? Because you always got a back door open. And the problem with not committing to a long-term relationship is that the bloody thing is going to fail unless you're all in. Because life is very difficult, and with something like, you know, a relationship that's supposed to span the decades, if you're not all in, it's not going to work.
Except for Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell.
Exactly.
when you keep your eye on the
Hollywood
exit.
figured it
Yeah,
out.
right.
gotta
Well,
wait.
that's right. If there's any back door at all and any reason to take it, you're going to take it. So,
Sure.
like, if I know I can leave you, then I'm not going to have to discuss anything difficult with you. But if I know if I'm stuck with you for the rest of the life.
Jordan Peterson attacks no-fault divorce. Love that. I mean, this is psychotic. The notion that marriages are supposed to be a trap in perpetuity is luckily an outdated principle. It's an outdated concept. So
My
stupid.
life, I better sort things out. Then I might have enough gall
I have another
to do
theory,
that.
though. You always want to give a contract to, you always want a player playing for a contract in the final year. So if every year they're playing for a renewal, you could get a better performance year to year. You don't take anything for granted.
Well, I think you can't take anything granted within the confines of a marriage. I mean,
Right.
maybe I misunderstood what you meant, but you can't take things for granted in a marriage either, because
Gotta perform.
unless you continue to renegotiate, you lose track of each other, and then things wander apart.
Right.
And so you have to be on your best game all the time if you want to keep the marriage alive.
You should be anyway. I'm just saying. Jordan, we've been over the last couple of days talking about the survey that's come out. You know, a lot of people think that kids who are in college are predominantly leaning way to the left.
Yeah.
Now there's this new survey that has come out that has shown that 12th grade high school boys are trending.
That's awesome. Dude, that's crazy. Okay? Guys, 12-year-olds are getting reactionary. Oh, joy. Is not necessarily the political analysis I'd be expecting from adults. They're 12 years old, man. Oh, 12th grade. Did I misunderstood?
Out that has shown that 12th grade high school boys are
Oh, never mind. 12th grade high school boys. My bad. I misunderstood it. Sorry. Fuck. For chat, that was approximately, it was a 19-minute walk. Total distance covered is 0.67 miles. Average pace was 27:52, like a 27-minute mile, I guess. Wait, no, not a 27-minute mile. Active calories burned 205 calories. Total calories burned 251 calories. And the average heart rate was a perfect 130, which is the maximum, which is the best heart rate for, no, 27-minute mile is very slow. I don't think it was a 27-minute mile. 130 beats per minute is like the best for fat burning. It's not so bad. It's not so much that it like automatically goes into high intensity cardio, but it's also not so little that heart rate training is legit king. Zone 2 training is the way. Why no suit? It's arraignment day. Why no suit? Look at how much I just sweat. You know how hot it is in here? It was a 15-minute mile, sorry. Which is a pretty good pace for walking fast. I'm glistening currently. Look at me. What happens if you go over 130 BPM? Go over 130 BPM. It doesn't, I mean, it's just, now you're in the high intensity, like higher intensity training, which is fine. But I think like maximizing. This is the sun, a killer Bella. What? Right, actually, it probably is a... Anyway, guys, your heart rate zones are going to differ. Not everyone is a 130 BPM zone 1. No, I mean, 130 BPM is good because ultimately it's good for fat burn, but it doesn't actually take too much of a toll. If you become more active and your heart rate is higher than that, that means like you'll get hungrier. I mean, everyone is different, but for me, I've found that 130 BPM is good overall for fat burning and, you know, not necessarily doing something too strenuous. When I play basketball, it's usually around 160. Anyway, I was an NCAA runner. 130 to 150 BPM is a good conversational pace that won't create lactic acid buildup, which is great for long cardio. Anyway. I forgot what the fuck we were talking about. Oh, they were talking about fucking 12th graders being conservative and celebrating. They're like, oh, guys, it's sick. 12th graders and kids in high school are conservative now. We're saved. We're good.
This new survey that has come out that has shown that 12th grade high school boys are trending conservative, whereas 12th grade high school girls are trending to the progressive side.
Yeah.
So why suddenly are these young men about to enter college or the workforce or whatever becoming more conservative?
You know, because they've been listening to Joe Rogan.
No, it's Andrew Tate.
Well, that's definitely part of it. I mean,
it's probably Andrew Tate for the record. It's not Joe Rogan.
I mean, there's
You're not kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all. There's a countercultural conservative movement that's very, very powerful, and I also think that the young men who are
they're fucking 12th graders, man. They're children. They're babies. They're baby-brained. Yes, they're responding to stimuli. There is no countercultural conservatism. Okay? That's it. They will find out that their politics resemble their fucking grandparents and their dads shortly thereafter and realize that it was gross. There are plenty of people in here in this community that were also a part of that supposedly counterculture wave of conservatism that wisened up to the reality that it's not counterculture at all, to literally believe the exact same things that your dad believes, to believe the exact same things that you hear on Fox News or on an email chain online. It's just, for the moment, when they're in high school, when they're supposed to be in a relatively diverse learning environment, their teachers are telling them, don't be a fucking asshole. And of course, what's more asshole-ish and standoffish than conservative politics? That's it. That's why they fail to consider that it's not necessarily counterculture, because they're trapped in this like very confined ideological sphere that is supposed to be good for educational learning. Obviously, it's going to have a liberal tint to it. It's very, very stupid.
are tilting in that direction or at the forefront. The young women will follow. It'll be a 5-year lag or something like that, but the young men will get there first.
Well,
so that's how it looks.
You see a lot of the combat sports more getting into that. The combat sports, you see Zuckerberg and now doing it. A lot of people trying to, all right, if
yeah, dude, I know. Working out is inherently a conservative value, which is why every fucking fat person on Fox News or at the Oklahoma Walmart, at Tulsa, Oklahoma Walmart, is actually a liberal. Great argument, man. Shut the fuck up. This idea that, like, working out is inherently reactionary is so stupid. Literally, 86% of cops are Republican voters, okay? 86% of police are Republican voters. They're all fucking fat. When has, like, conservatism been synonymous with, like, working out and taking care of your own body?
If society's trying to feminize me, I'm going to push back in some other way, and they might be finding the conservative movement for that.
Yeah, well, there's some danger in that.
Yeah, society is feminizing me. That's why I'm going to the gym, to become gayer than I ever could have imagined. Working out is gay as fuck. You go to the gym, you look at other dudes' bodies, you start admiring, okay? You become more comfortable, more masculine in many respects, but in a very gay way, okay? That's it. Some YouTubers like the Quarter Pounder and the Gundam Guy get into gaming spaces with shit like subscribe for free game code and then dump them with right-wing bullshit. Yeah, speaking of which, Quarter Pounder, right-wing commentator, in profoundly good shape.
Too, because, you know, there are people who are more extreme on the sort of pro-masculine side. Andrew Tate, people like that sort of spring to mind, that become attractive to men that are being like feminized in the manner that you described. And so,
well, on the note of what you were talking about, the pendulum swinging, when does it swing back the other way with schools and teaching sex to our children at an early age? You know, a lot of people had a problem with what Ron DeSantis did down in Florida. I didn't, because I have a child.
Is that? That's awesome. That was pretty funny.
Going into second grade, we're not talking about sex. We don't talk about that at all. She just knows God puts a baby in a mom's tummy.
I think what's happening in the States is that the answer to the problem of sex education in schools is we'll just take our kids out of the damn schools. I think the whole system will collapse. I also think if the Republican governors had a lick of sense, especially with regard to long-term planning, that they would take teacher certification away from the faculties of education. Because the faculties of education are, what would you say, they're sort of rotten central in the university system, and they have a complete hammerlock on teacher certification, and therefore, you know, a grip on the whole education system.
So just real quick, because I want you to talk about your online university, starting with your daughter.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not very happy with what the universities have done over the last, let's say, 20 years.
Which you've been part of.
Yeah, until about 6 years ago. We're trying to put a system online, Peterson Academy, that will drop the cost of a bachelor's degree to $4,000. We think we can find
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, this was the final step of that grift, baby. Make your own fake-ass university. Oh, I love that. I love that, dude. That's fire. Let's go. Let's go.
In the world and bring them to people, and also instantiate a set of extremely, what would you say, severe and high quality accreditation standards for the graduates, so that people who graduate from our university will be stamped with a credential that indicates genuine competence, literacy, intelligence, conscientiousness, and so forth. And I think that whole system is rife for an extreme upset.
How do we get it?
It's way too expensive. Well,
how do we get your online university?
It'll be online at Peterson Academy, likely in November.
Only 4,000 for the whole 4 years?
Well, we hope we can do it cheaper than that, but yeah, that's the plan.
Amazing.
Is there a political tilt or tint to it?
Not purposefully. I mean, there hasn't been a purposeful political tilt to anything that I've done. I've just tried to say what I thought was true. Turns out that tends to be more conservative now in the climate that's being generated politically. But so that wasn't purposeful. I never thought of myself as a conservative.
Are you selling it as if you want to think like me?
No, I'm selling it if you want to think.
Good.
Period. You know, and you know, it's a tricky issue, because it's really not obvious why you would want to think, because it's rather painful, right?
It's too hard these days. Why think?
Because acting out stupid ideas is even worse.
Yeah.
Right? No, but that's really the answer, is why should you debate with people? Why should you have difficult conversations with yourself? And the answer is to straighten things out before you put them into action, because bad as thinking is, not thinking is worse. And people aren't taught that well either, and we'd like to make that clear to people who are, say, enrolling in this university. You know, think or die, or suffer. Those are really your options.
But don't you think interacting is key too? So you could speak, but you want to hear what other people have to say, and then maybe test you and make you go deeper in your beliefs, or change
Well, there isn't
your
much difference in speaking to people, especially having difficult conversations, and think.
Fox News interviewing Jordan Peterson, Tucker interviewing Tate. It's not being talked about enough how manosphere red pill stuff is funneling people to traditional conservatism. I think it is being talked about, but up until recently, it was basically seen as a marginal, unimportant movement online of like sad, pathetic men. I think there is definitely a mainstream component to that because it aligns so heavily with objectivist, right-wing traditionalist thought. And I mean, I don't know. I just I feel like there are people out there on the left, at least, that have like made forays into self-help style stuff. Obviously, I've been a big champion of that from the jump. I've been doing it for many years, for as long as I've been on this platform, at least. And I think there's a space for that, but ultimately, young boys just want to hear like edgy commentary that makes them feel comfortable. They don't want their worldview to be shook. They want someone to dull them with lullabies about how it's actually women that are at fault. You're right, King. You feel sad because someone rejected you. Don't look within. Don't think about a sense of entitlement that you may have. It's actually their fault. It's the women that are bitches. They should know their place. Society was designed around that. And if you're not seeing those outcomes, that's because, you know, things have changed and we need to go back to the traditional norms. You know? They want that. In the survey, it's only about 23% of the 12th grade boys that chose the label conservative, but the highest percentage of them, 40%ish, still choose no political label. Yeah, but a lot of people who choose the no political label are, you know, let's be real. They're usually siding with whatever the inherent structure is, and if the inherent oppressive constructs are conservative, which they are, then they are also conservative. So that number is actually a little scary. If we're being real. It also tracks with how much hatred I get online, to be honest. I do get a lot of little baby Zoomers up my ass about like how gay I am and how I'm an F word. Or, you know, I'm just like an effete, well, not effete, they don't use that word, feminine bitch. The poll they're citing also said there wasn't a significant shift of political alignment in that age range over the last 1 or 2 decades, if I recall correctly. Yeah. I think it's the new ones coming back from COVID online learning. I think it's Twitter. I think it's all of these other outlets being... I mean, I think it's ultimately about the superstructure churning out cultural norms that reflect the material realities. We live in a patriarchal construct. So, of course, the content that is going to be elevated in that situation is going to reflect that reality. And that is precisely what's going on. That's what's happening. That's what we are experiencing. That wasn't going to change. And that won't change. The best you can expect is God, Kaya. It's funny that all the Kaya emos that we have are like from her being a baby, which was like only a month ago, and now she's so massive. How much does she weigh now? Like 60 pounds? It's fucking nuts. I try to like move her around in bed, And I have a hard time. She's still a baby, but I mean, she is about to be 5 months old in 2 days. Mike Vick for president? What? That's in 2010, man. What? Chill out.
Thinking. I mean, even when you think internally, what you're really doing is you're setting an internal dialogue up in your head. So, you know, you make yourself an enemy of the position that you hold. You let your enemy have his say, and you listen. If you're thinking verbally and you're actually thinking, that's what you're doing. Might be 2 or 3 people at the same time, you know, having at her in your head. But most people think by talking, which is why free speech is so important, right? You can't speak freely. You can't think. And if you can't think, then you suffer. So that's the cause.
What do we need to be doing at home with our children? What did your parents do with you?
They were encouraging, you know. And I think one of the things that really distinguished my family, to the degree that it was distinguished, was that my father in particular, my mother was very accepting and a very loving person, but my father was a very encouraging person with relatively high standards. But his proposition was something like, well, you can be doing better, but I think you can do it. And that encouragement is extremely useful. And I think part of the reason that my work has been popular online and in the public domain is because it's encouraging. Now, and I don't tell young men, for example, and this is back to the issue of young men, I don't say, well, you're okay the way you are, because what the hell, what young man wants to hear that? Every young man who has any sense at all knows perfectly well that he's not okay the way he is. If he was okay the way he is, women would be flocking to him, and they're not. And the reason for that is he has a lot to learn still. Yeah. You know, but you can say, well, you have a lot to learn. You know, look at you, you're a mess. You have a lot to learn. But you could learn it, and if you did, well, maybe you make something of yourself, and then there's some hope in that message, right? You know, because you think, well, if you just accepted people the way they are, they'd be happy. It's like, no, they wouldn't, because they have nothing to shoot for. And people who have nothing to shoot for aren't happy. Because happiness actually is a consequence of moving towards something that you're aiming for. So no aim, no happiness. That's another good thing for young people to know too. If you don't have a goal, that is what technically happiness occurs when you see yourself moving towards a valued goal. That's how it works neuropsychologically. That's how it works chemically. It's an indication of progress towards a goal. So the higher your goal.
Dude, he is so good at just like passionately rambling about pseudoscientific nonsense. I don't know. He's just like very good at keeping things tight. Anyway. You think he's doing semen retention? He takes a little bit of truth and goes somewhere else with it. Yeah. There's always an element of truth in Jordan Peterson's commentary. It's always like the most basic analysis on how to rewire your brain to feel positive feelings by achieving goals that you create for yourself, which is something that I advocate for regularly. The only difference is he doesn't he doesn't just leave it at that. He always then turns around and ties it into, like, I don't know, the CCP doing cock milking or something. You know?
the higher your possibility for happiness, even though you have to suffer from the distance.
You're never going to have it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Listen, if you don't set a goal, you'll never be happy.
We are really happy that you would drop by. Wide-ranging conversation. Now let's have some cheese.
Sounds good. Sounds
Jordan
good.
Peterson, we thank you very much for joining us live.
Right.
My pleasure.
Now you know why both Bill Maher and Joe Rogan love him. You know, and you can get called.
Well, you know, funny thing about JBP is that your boy, HasanAbi Piker, will most likely be debating him in Oxford this fall. So he said he was down to do it. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see if it works out. Yeah. Lizzo responds to, oh, okay, here it is. It's time for the Lizzo shit that a lot